What's up, guys? This is the first episode of Diabetes on Blast. I'm your host, Chris Ruden, and I am with Rodney Miller. He is a strongman, power lifter, and type 1 diabetic as well. Go ahead, Rodney. Tell them a little bit about yourself and how you were diagnosed with diabetes.
So I'm 33 now and competitive primarily in strongman. I was actually diagnosed at the age of 4. So long time ago. I was presenting with pretty typical signs, frequent urination, fatigue, and everything like that. And so rushed in the hospital, got the finger stick, and I was 880. And so that put everybody in full panic mode, admitted immediately, and I went through some complications and then actually went into a coma for 2 weeks and kind of hung out there. Luckily, I seemed to have a pretty resilient body and was able to come out of the coma and basically started my life as a diabetic. Was really kind of a sickly kid, missed a lot of school and stuff like that. And it really was not until I got older and really found the gym, found fitness and the nutrition that comes with that I've really been able to prosper health-wise and really tie it into the diabetes to bring numbers down into a good range. But so, I've definitely had plenty of pitfalls with trying to balance athletics and diabetes. And so I've actually worked with a couple of doctors of biochemistry who are pretty premier nutrition coaches and strongman and a couple of other fields. So hopefully I can piece all that together and now be able to put it out there for service to other people.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool to hear. And if your diabetic control is as nice as your beard is, then I'm pretty sure you're on the right track.
It's a labor of love, I think, both ways.
Absolutely. So today, Rodney and I are talking about.
It's a labor of love, I think, both.
Why did you do that?
That was strange.
I was like, why is it doing that? Why is it getting an echo now? Don't play with me. Okay, I think we're good now. Today, Rodney and I are going to be talking about weight loss as it relates to diabetes. Rodney and I encounter a lot of different people skewing what they think should be done in weight loss and using diabetes as a crutch instead of applying well-known science to weight loss in general. So the main topic I want to talk about right now is metabolism and the way weight loss actually occurs. What's your take on weight loss and metabolism, Rodney?
Well, I think that it's really like a lot of diabetics try to go, well, I'm a diabetic, so everything that I do is different than what happens in anybody else. And your metabolism really goes through the exact same chemical processes that a non-diabetic does. And so we really need to pay more attention to where the research is being done in the healthy individuals, because that will translate to us. It's directly across the board, and it's calories in, calories out. If you're going to eat in a surplus of calories, you're never going to lose weight. If you eat in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. It's kind of that simple. And
absolutely, it really comes down to, like what Rodney said, you need to burn more calories than you take in order to lose weight. And vice versa, if you want to gain weight, you need to take in more calories than you burn, So a lot of people use diabetes as a crutch saying, oh, well, insulin. Oh, well, carbs affect me differently. Oh, well, I know my body. Being diabetic causes you to gain weight. Well, we have some funny thing called the law of thermodynamics, which states if you burn more calories than you take in, you will lose weight. It is just factual, So what do you think? Why do you think diabetics feel that diabetes causes them to gain weight? Why do they use that as an excuse all the time?
Well, and me and because we've been in this industry for a little while, and it's really an out that normal people don't have. Normal people blame it on time or they think they eat good or anything like that. Whereas diabetics, we're already inundated and being fed some misinformation or incomplete information from the doctors. And so, they may tell you, oh, you're going to gain some initial weight once you start insulin. And it's very likely because they've been in a deficit of insulin. And so once they take the proper amount for their bodies, their blood sugars are going to come back in range and the metabolism is going to start operating efficiently. And then somewhere in there is lost the fact that if you're eating more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. We just attribute to it being the insulin's fault because we're not putting together the complete picture.
Absolutely. So I feel like even as adults, we still play the blame game, We're still so eager to blame something for the cause of weight loss or something for the cause of weight gain. As a child, someone gets in trouble and you're quick to blame them. You call them out, you tattletale. But now people are blaming hormones. People are blaming carbs. People are blaming eating at night. People are blaming everything but what's actually going on, which is overconsumption of calories and almost metabolic damage, if you want to go that far, of being in too big of a deficit for too long. So there's a few issues that go along, but the main issues, they're always ignored. In my therapy, I would always tell people I'm looking for elephants, not mice. People are focusing on the mice and ignoring the elephant in the room, So it's a big issue. You actually touched on something that I really want to talk on, though. Doctors and weight loss. So my take on that personally is, I'll ask you, Rodney, would you go to get your car fixed by your dentist?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Exactly. Well, Rodney, they have a car, right? So
Yeah.
because they have a car doesn't mean they know how to fix cars. The problem with doctors is they have a degree, but just because they have a degree doesn't mean the degree is in weight loss. Their degree is in medicine. My degree is in weight loss, is in exercise physiology, So I don't prescribe medicine just as they shouldn't prescribe exercise. And to be honest, Rodney, you already know that both of us probably train some of the doctors that prescribe the information as well. So that's one of my take on it. What's your take on doctors prescribing weight loss and almost endocrinologists' role in losing weight?
Well, and it's basically out of their depth. So while they might have taken some base level courses on metabolism and weight loss, weight gain, and understand the very basic levels of that, but that's not their day-to-day focus. Their day-to-day focus is making sure that your numbers fall within their guidelines, and especially endocrinologists. They want you right here. And this may be not ideal for you even, and if I show up and have an A1C of 7, which is not a horrible A1C, but that's too high to them. But if I'm having lows every night, then there's still a problem, but they're not addressing that. And so they don't care what you eat and they don't care about quality of food and all this and that because that's not their job. And, sadly in America, in the health system, we don't treat whole patients. We treat individual pieces of the patient. And they're going to refer you to a dietitian, and a dietitian has to go off of what they learned at school, which was the food pyramid, or now the daily plate. And we've proven that over and over and over and over and over again, that that's not an ideal way to eat. So it's very much like you said, it's like taking your car to the dentist and then getting mad because he puts toothpaste in the radiator.
Exactly. So on top of that, you rolled right into the RDA and the food pyramid. I've had a few things to say about that for a while, and I'd love to address those now. Recommended daily allowance for protein is, I believe, I think half of your body weight in kilograms. So the normal recommended daily allowance per person is anywhere between 30 to 50 grams of protein, I believe. I think you're right. Based on the recommended daily allowance. Now, I know it's around there. It could be a little higher, it could be a little lower. But for the most part, it's drastically low relative to the research that's out that shows higher protein diets are effective in long-term weight loss and fitness goals for multiple reasons. Now, the issue is people are scared to go on high protein diets because they think of kidney damage, they think of all kinds of effects. And being diabetic, people, once again, worry about everything. You know, they smell a carb and they think, oh my God, my A1C is going to go up. I better go drink a bunch of water and eat some cinnamon and try every other trick in the book to get rid of diabetes in 10 days, like all these ebooks say. So the issue is RDA scares a lot of people. They have a lot of skewed information. Along with the low protein diet that they recommend an extremely high carb diet, extremely high.
Yeah.
So their recommended daily allowance for carbs is anywhere between 55 to 70%, depending on what you do.
Yeah.
That's a really high percentage of calories to come from carbs from my source. Now, I am in no way a low carb freak, and I know you are not either.
Yeah.
And we will get to carbs, but compared to the RDA, technically we are proponents. We enforce a moderate to almost low carb diet if we're doing 30 to 40% carbohydrates. What's your take on the RDA really, and how do you think that affects weight loss as it relates to diabetics?
Well, I mean, we've proven it over the last 50 years that it doesn't work, and all you have to do is go to Walmart to see that it doesn't work. I mean, so what their guidelines are for basic human survival. And so we have an abundance of carbohydrates in society. It's an easy food source. It's a very abundant food source.
And it's cheap.
Yeah, and it's cheap. You can go buy a 50-pound bag of rice, way cheaper than you can go buy 50 pounds of meat. However, when we look at long term, you're right. The higher protein diets prove time and time again that they're much better at maintaining lean body mass, which is what you want, and aids in the burning of fat. So, but at the other side of it, like we get into the other school of thought where you cut all the carbs out and you slam the fat all the way to the ceiling, and there's some hormonal backlash that can come from that. And it's one of those things, it's so varied. People's metabolisms interact so differently based on activity level, age, ethnic background. There's so many variables. So like you said, let's get rid of the mice. Let's talk about the elephant. Okay.
Awesome.
We've proven that moderate carb is great because we have ample energy to maintain daily tasks, keep the brain functioning at a high level, and to not drive insulin resistance through the roof. We've proven that we have to have a certain amount of essential fatty acids. So, that's going to probably vary based on everybody, but you're looking between 25, probably at most 35%. And then so we make up the remainder of that in protein because it's filling. It takes a while for it to break down, so it stays in your body for a period of time, much faster than a carb would. And it's going to help you to maintain lean body mass. Every cell in the body is made up of protein. And when you starve yourself from protein, that's where we get people that are falling into that skinny fat syndrome. And it's really funny. You look at the people that really restrict calories the most, and they almost always restrict protein the most. And so you're deteriorating your own body.
Absolutely. Going on to that, like both of us said, being in a calorie deficit, meaning burning more calories than you take in, is necessary to lose weight. But what kind of weight is that? Are you losing water weight, body fat, muscle mass? You specifically want to lose body fat. So that's a little different story. And I always ask people, if you lost 30 pounds and you look the same, would you be happy? Probably not. But if you lost 10 pounds and it looked like you lost 30 pounds, would you be happy? Of course. So it's the appearance of the weight most people want to lose. When it comes to losing weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit. When it comes to preserving muscle mass, lean body mass, and reducing body fat, higher protein diet is the constant in most studies. And even meta-analysis of studies in weight loss, higher protein diets are much more effective in preserving muscle mass and reducing body fat when in a caloric deficit. Now, That's where the confusion comes into play for low carb, high fat, and high fat, high carb, low fat. They don't matter. Dozens and dozens and dozens of studies have showed time and time again when in a calorie deficit, whether you do high carb, low fat, or high fat, high carb, high fat, low carb, gets confusing, sorry. They're equal. It doesn't matter. As long as you're in the calorie deficit, your protein is high, that's okay.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be extremists. What's your take on high fat, low carb?
So
let's actually, what do you define as low carb personally? Because technically speaking, low carb could be 30% according to the RDA. But let's go off kind of what you feel is low carb.
Yeah, off of a real world, like personal experience thing. And I'll preface this by saying I've gone full keto for 6 months. And so, you can't say that I don't have experience with this or didn't give it a long enough period of time, because I have. So for me, I'm looking anywhere between 30 grams of carbs a day up to about 100. And that really seems to be about the window. For women, it's probably going to be closer to 30 to 50 a day, just based on body size. And, those they work and they don't work, because they work to a point. And most of the point is that most people are not going to be engaged in the kind of intense, strenuous exercise that would demand a lot of ATP conversion and stuff like that. And so their bodies will have time to take the fat, uncouple it, turn it into glucose, and then use that. But if you are one of those, like me, that engages in some really high anaerobic threshold training, the low carb was horrible. Like, I would get 2 sets into a day and into a training session, and my energy was gone, because there's simply not enough time to uncouple the fat and get it converted into a usable fuel source. So like your endurance athletes, your primarily aerobic training people, can see a lot of benefit from it. And it's everybody likes to say it's the law of small numbers. You're taking small amounts of carbs, you need small amounts of insulin. But once again, is it optimal? Usually it's not. Does it work? Yes. Is it optimal? Most of the time, not.
Absolutely. Okay. So, you would say that it can definitely work, but it's just not optimal for the majority of people.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree, because I kind of consider what people should do on a bell curve. There's a few people who will be carb sensitive. There's a few people who will be fat sensitive, if you want to call it that. But for the most part, I'd say about 70% of people do well on a moderate diet. It's balanced. It gives them enough energy. It gives a balanced macronutrient. But more so, psychologically, you won't be starving. Psychologically, you won't be restricted. Dieting is already hard. It's already difficult. So there's a lot more than just pen and paper say this diet is the best. The best diet is the one you can stick to. The best diet is the one that gives you consistent results. And the best diet is one that allows you to enjoy your life while also getting those results. Agree?
Yes, 100%. If you were a slave to every single thing that has to go in your mouth, that's a quality of life issue. And if you take it to a radical extreme, it's no different than an eating disorder.
Absolutely, 100%. I feel most people develop some sort of eating disorder or bad relationship with food because of their desire to achieve, but lack of clarity in how to get there. I generally have, 3 steps to success in anything, which is dream, plan, hustle. Broken down into weight loss, it would be dream. The idea would be they want to lose weight. The plan would be they're not really sure what to do. Maybe low carb today, maybe vegan, maybe paleo, maybe this, maybe that. The lack of clarity in the plan messes with their execution. It messes with their hustle. So they're not able to execute the plan because the plan didn't really exist. Their plan was try something, almost like training ADD or nutrition ADD. People don't understand that vegan, paleo, anything like that is a concept. It's not a diet.
Yeah.
if you want to eat vegan, if you want to eat paleo, that's fine, but you still need to know your basal metabolic rate. You still need to know your total daily energy expenditure, or else you're not going to know how much to consume. Back to our main point, which is you need to burn more calories than you take in. If you have skipped that step, you are trying to sprint before you even crawled, and that makes no sense. So we need to take a step back and understand what we need to do first. You don't start building a building from the 52nd floor down. You start from the ground up.
100%. You know, and that's the biggest thing. And I know you've seen me post, you know, find a BMR calculator, find an RMR calculator, and get some sort of rough estimate of what your daily caloric intake needs. And we see a lot of really extreme low calorie numbers come across. And while they think that they're doing the right thing, they don't have the understanding and the clarity to see what the long-term damage, like you said, you mentioned earlier, metabolic damage. You know, we see shows like The Biggest Loser, and we don't see that those people end up with long-term health issues because of the extreme direction they were forced into, the extreme calorie reduction, the extreme amount of exercise. And like you said, it has to be sustainable. And more importantly, and I think this gets forgotten a lot, it has to be repeatable. So if you think that you have a tried and true method, you should be able to repeat that in another person, because the metabolic process doesn't differ that much from one to the next. And so if it really is a secure, foolproof plan, it should be repeatable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with the calculators, you actually mentioned those. Do you go off a specific calculation type, like the Mifflin St. Joe-Lair or Bennis-Heredict equation? Do you pick a certain one, or which do you prefer?
Well, and I kind of do the kitchen sink approach. I'll pull both numbers and I'll kind of average between them, because there's still too many variables there to give you anything other than a rough idea. And so
it's always going to be a rough idea. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So you're going to take that number and you're going to, I always recommend clients eat at maintenance for at least a little while. And if they lose weight, well, then we know that we undershot maintenance. And that's fine, because we're getting the end result already. But if we start to gain, well, that means that we know that maintenance is not really maintenance. It's too high. So we need to pull it down until we reach maintenance. And then you know. And so then you can make some sort of logical next step in the plan.
Absolutely. Maintenance is a good topic to talk about now, because I've been doing a lot of research, especially with my ebook coming out. Maintenance can change. How do you feel on what their actual maintenance is versus dieting for too long and actually changing your maintenance or lowering your maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You know, we've kind of found that the old myth of, you know, your body goes into starvation mode and shuts metabolism down is kind of a little wonky and not as severe as what a lot of people would initially try to tell you. But if you have, let's say I'm 250 pounds and I diet down to 175 pounds, well, my calories obviously are going to fall. I mean, the act of maintaining 250 pounds of body weight is far greater calorically than trying to maintain 175 pounds of body weight. And so we have to reestablish a maintenance. And people, I think, misunderstand that. And then they jump right back to where they were and they gain all this weight back. And they're like, oh, well, I stopped dieting and I gained all the weight back. Well, you didn't stop dieting and go to maintenance. You stopped dieting and went right back to a calorie surplus. You know, you have to adjust those down. You know, that's like, you know, I'm going to go 200 miles today, but I want to go 400 miles tomorrow and put the same amount of gas in the car. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Definitely. The problem I see most with people is that they settle for what works rather than doing what works best. And they think that they get a calculator, or some people don't even get a calculator. They're just guessing. The next set of people would actually do the calculation, and they would say, okay, for me to lose 1 pound, I have to eat this. I'll just eat this. I'll lose 1 pound a week for the next year. I'll lose 50 pounds in a year. Life is perfect. Unfortunately, weight loss and life do not work like that. They're not a perfect plan. You're not a perfect machine. So you have to do what works best. And what works best is being dynamic. So even knowing my clients' maintenance calories, knowing that they're on a deficit, I need to constantly monitor that, because with their weight change, like you said, their maintenance will change. With increased activity level, their maintenance will change. Their total daily energy expenditure changes. If you're a jittery type person, you're going to have a higher TDEE than you will someone who doesn't move around a lot. So there's so many factors that come into play. And like you said, ultimately it's just a rough guess, but it is more of an educated guess than saying, hey, I'm going to eat some broccoli and some stuff that cavemen used to eat, and I'm going to get ripped by jumping around. That's not, you don't wish this into existence. You don't hope it into existence. You don't just throw poop on the wall and see what sticks. You have to do what works best. And we do have science available to us. Today is the day of technology and information. And I feel anyone who's not willing to, learn, or at least talk with someone who knows and is a professional in this, you're neglecting yourself and your ability to get to your goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Most of the people that come to me are eating in an extreme deficit because, like you said, they see the number and they go, this is what it takes to lose 1 pound a week. But I want to lose 3 pounds a week. So I'm just going to eat half the calories that I need. And they don't understand that starts really messing with hormones, leptin, ghrelin, and stuff like that. So, we need to take a step back and go, okay, things are going to change and adapt as I start to lose more weight. We need to get the most out of the diet first and then work on the activity, because a lot of people undereat and then they can't adhere to a diet. So then they don't do the diet and they wonder why the results don't happen. But it starts with a plan. Like you said, you've got to, we have science, we have research now. We have a pretty good understanding of the metabolic process and how all that works. And so we need to take advantage of it. We need to watch, okay, if I eat 2,200 calories a day, but I, can go on a 30-minute walk every morning and then can do a weightlifting session in the evening, and that puts me at a deficit of 300 calories, that's better than just eating 300 calories less a day at 1,200 calories. And people don't really get that either. You want to give your body ample nutrients, and it's much easier to eat enough to be full all the time and then just exercise a little bit more.
Absolutely. People do not need to do cardio to lose weight, whether you're diabetic or not. Cardio is the last thing you should do. If you thought of a pyramid, the biggest part on the bottom is going to be resistance training. Then an equal part nutrition. The very top is cardio. Cardio, like you said, is merely a calorie deficit that you can get through nutrition rather than adding additional cardio. But generally, that's the first thing people do is cardio. Yeah. They associate sweating with losing body fat, and it's a lot more advanced than that, Yeah. So nutrition-wise, I do want to go into a little bit of how carbs and blood sugar affect weight loss in diabetics. So specifically talking about carbs, I want to bring up the glycemic index and its role in general. What is your take on the glycemic index, and add any information you want that is related to weight loss?
So the glycemic index is kind of a tricky thing to really understand. The base values that you have work, I would say most of the time for most individuals. Some people are going to have intolerances to certain foods, I know client of mine can eat a banana and be fine. I eat a banana and I'm 600.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but those things, and the ability of the body to handle a glycemic load is different.
Glycemic load is absolutely different than glycemic index.
Yeah. And I feel like people get the two kind of confused because your glycemic load is probably better than mine because I'm going to say more in shape, but have more lean body mass probably than I do, and your body fat percentage is lower. And so you're already more efficient at storing and using carbs than I am. But when we look at the index and we look at what the response should be per food source, but we have to understand that this is one small piece of information that has to fit into a broad scale of what the entire day has been. Did you have a high glycemic index food in the morning, which sets you up with probably a little bit more insulin resistance because you got the sharp spike, and then you had a moderate glycemic index for lunch, but you got the same spike? Whereas if you'd had a lower glycemic index first thing in the morning, got less of a spike, probably used less insulin, and then you came to a moderate glycemic index food for lunch, you would probably see the same thing. You'd see a much smaller rise in blood glucose levels. And then we're talking about heat. We're talking about exercise. Are you 18 hours post an intense anaerobic training session? Because that's going to affect it. It affects how easily your body can uptake things and minimize the spike that would come from that index. And those things come into play, and that's why, food choice does matter to a certain extent, because obviously the more in range we can stay with the blood glucose level, the easier it's going to be for the body to work. And it's going to be easier to stay within your kind of metabolic boundaries, that you're not burning the body up by being elevated glucose, and you're not starving the body by being in a hypoglycemia state. So, that's kind of my take. The glycemic index, I think, is really misunderstood in general by the general populace. And so I wished we could get some better definitions kind of out there for people. And so the understanding would be better.
I really want to drive home the point that people put way too much emphasis on things like glycemic index, carb content, all sorts of things. Lemon in your water to lose weight. The most ridiculous things in the world are given so much emphasis, when the main things like higher protein diet or, calorie deficit, being in a negative energy balance, they get pushed to the wayside. Yeah, but let's talk about the glycemic index. Okay, let's talk about the glycemic index. How about a potato with a glycemic index of what, like 100, a white potato?
Yeah, I think so.
When is the last time you ate a white potato without sour cream or butter?
Never.
Disgusting. And as we know, fat and protein delay the digestion of carbohydrates. Specifically, poly and monounsaturated fats really delay the spike in, insulin response in non-diabetics or blood glucose response in diabetics, as well as protein. So if we want to talk about glycemic index as well, whey protein as a huge glucose response, and it's a protein. It's not even a carbohydrate, So for people that are doing low carb diets and slamming whey protein and leucine and all these, you're still getting a huge glucose response, or somewhat of a glucose response. The index is designed in a vacuum. Like you said, it doesn't take into account the other things you've been doing the other day. I'm not even going to get into training. I'm going to stick to nutrition and just say, in the morning, maybe if you had a white potato in the morning, that might show you glycemic index. But for the most part, while you're eating a balanced meal, so you're not getting the glycemic index. A high glycemic food taken with protein and fat will change the glycemic index and lower it, So the issue where people are like, you got to eat low glycemic food because it's just better, it's better. Not really, if you think about it, You have to take into account everything else that's going on. We do not live in a vacuum. We live in a very dynamic world. We eat dynamically. We train dynamically. In regards to controlling blood sugar, that is absolutely important when it comes to training performance and making sure that you are within your levels, like you said. But when it comes to bare weight loss, you need to burn more calories than you take in. I will repeat that till I'm blue in the face. If you do not know how many calories you need to lose weight, that's step one. Before going to the gym in the morning and not eating until 3 o'clock and doing fasted cardio for 45 minutes and I don't even know. You need to focus on building the correct plan. You need to ask yourself what your plan is and what's going on with that. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's you hit the nail on the head better than I did, and that's the thing, you know, that we're people jump the gun. You know, they hear catchwords and catchphrases. You know, glycemic index and low carb, high fat, and all this and that, and then they forget that it's calories in, calories out. And that's step one. You know, like you said, if you don't know what your calorie maintenance is, you've got to figure that out.
So as you said that, I actually, in my head, I pictured someone commenting on this and saying, it's not just calories in, it's not just calories in, it's carbs, diabetic, you can't. All right. So Rodney, I'm going to ask you a question, all right? Who would lose more weight? The person eating low carb, but over consuming calories, taking in more calories than they burn, or the person consuming high carb, let's say 50%, and they're diabetic, 50% carbohydrates, but they're in a calorie deficit of 750. Who's going to lose more weight?
The calorie deficit every single
time. Rodney, no, the carbs. They're having a lot of carbs.
You could be fairy dust, and as long as it's in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight.
We laugh, guys, but honestly, as diabetics, we need to control our blood sugars. Absolutely. We need to take care of our bodies. But if we want to control our blood sugars optimally, for one, we definitely want to build muscle because that's shown time and time again to reduce A1C over time. But we really want to enjoy the process of staying healthy. And if you want to eat carbs, and you still want to lose weight, there are ways to do that. There are very optimal ways to do that by understanding how many calories you need to consume to get to your goal and understanding that you can eat how you want flexibly and still get to your goal. Now, Rodney, I do want to get your take on a statement I'm about to make that is really going to disrupt some people. And if you know me by now, I really like to make some bold statements, but I like to back it up. Nutrition professor in Kansas did a 10-week study where he only ate Twinkies and Doritos and high protein diet. He lost 27 pounds and reduced his bad cholesterol and BMI. What is your take? He actually said the quantity of food is more important than the quality of food strictly as it relates to weight loss. What's your take on that?
It's 100% true. I mean, we have a whole diet system. I mean, by some really smart people out there that have made a lot of money doing it because it works, called If It Fits Your Macros. And, you know, some people in the diabetes world may not have heard of it, but me and you in the fitness world have. And so as long as the calories and the macros fit, you can eat anything. You know, now, long-term wise, are you going to be the healthiest individual eating Twinkies every day? Probably not. But when it comes, like you said, when it comes to strictly talking about fat loss, the abundance of protein and the restriction of calories, that's really all it takes. Now, once you have those down, we can tweak other little minor details. But the two main things have to be there: the abundance of protein and the under maintenance level calorie intake. And that's it.
Definitely. I think I messaged you the other day but when people try and lose weight, it's the equivalent of crashing your car and worrying about cleaning your rim because it's dirty. You just crashed your car. You need to worry about the big things, the big picture, not the small picture, you know? Now, back to the Twinkie study. The nutrition professor did say he doesn't recommend that you should eat Twinkies. He did it to prove a point that the main component of weight loss is being in a calorie deficit. The second is being in a higher protein diet. But short term, his metabolic panel was not bad. So it kind of shows, you know, the way our body metabolizes most things is similar to others. So if you're going to metabolize, white rice, or you're going to metabolize banana, people say banana is healthier, but technically speaking, from a metabolic perspective, they're both metabolized very similarly, especially if you want to bring the glycemic index into play and other food roles effect on it. But for diabetics looking to lose weight, what would you say are your 3 biggest pieces of advice?
The 3 biggest pieces of advice is A, start with a understanding of your individual caloric needs.
How would you suggest they do that?
So, like we've said, start with one of the calculators. And, me personally, I recommend pulling both numbers from both formulas. And they're easy to find online. And comparing the two and kind of shooting it halfway in the middle, just as a rough estimate. You need to take your daily activity into account. So if you pull from an RMR calculator and you train 3 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week probably, and you're moderately active going on a walk or something like that the rest of the time, you're probably at about 1.5, and that's pretty good base place to start. 1.5 times your RMR. And so that accounts for the calories that you burn in your day-to-day life, going to the gym, going on walks, walking your dog, whatever. Start there and eat there for, usually you can start to see things at the 2 to 3 week mark, but it's probably safer to run it out for a month at least. And if you don't gain any weight and you don't lose any weight during that time period, net. Now, if you gain 2 or 3 pounds in the first week, that's not proof. That could be any number of things. But if over a month you maintain weight, that's your maintenance. And then you decide on your goal. Losing a pound a week is more than sufficient because you're less likely to burn muscle tissue at that point. So know your caloric needs, and that rolls into 2. Know your limitations on your caloric needs. So if you want to lose 20 pounds, you're much better off doing it a pound a week than you are trying to do it 3 pounds a week, because this is not sustainable. This is. And when you do this, you're less likely to burn off muscle tissue in the process.
Now, I do want to interject real quick, and I want to propose something to you. Would you agree with me in saying that someone, depending on your body fat percentage level, certain people can afford to lose a little bit more, a little bit quicker without risking muscle loss? An example would be a person who comes to you with 35 to 40% body fat. Do you feel that they could afford to lose 1.5 pounds to maybe 2 pounds a week safely with a higher protein diet?
Yes, as long as the protein consumption was high enough.
And of course, they were training and doing everything they need to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we kind of get into, it's hard to set hard lines. Most people come within, probably 30, women probably 35% body fat. But yeah, if you're in excess of that, you obviously have more fat to lose. And so your body can stand to shed a little bit more of it a little faster. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I actually came up with a system where I kind of rank people. Obviously, a lot of this is guessing, guys. We're not, pretty much no one knows for a fact what you need to be consuming exactly to get to your goal, because it is dynamic. Like I said, you are constantly changing. Your body is different than every other person's, and your body changes today to tomorrow. But what I found is people over 30% can afford to be on up to 1,000 a day calorie deficit. And before I looked into this, I was like, there's no way, that is way too much. You can't. But they really can. And why would I want them to be at that high level of body fat with that risk level for longer, right? If you think about it, I want to reduce your risk of heart disease. I want to reduce your A1C. I want to reduce all these complications that come with diabetes. And if that's being exacerbated by a higher body fat level, I want to reduce that as quick as I can, as safely as I can, and as efficiently as I can. So anyone over 30%, I feel, can go upwards of 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds a week loss. Anyone between 20 to 30% can afford 1 to 1.5 pounds. Now, when you get under 20%, 1 pound is usually the max that I go. And, under 15%, I usually lower that to up to, 0.5 pound, because preservation of muscle mass becomes a lot harder when the body is deprived of that much body fat, and our body naturally likes to hold on. It keeps this level, this homeostasis, especially for women. Women's bodies want to keep them around 20-25% body fat. That's just naturally what women's bodies want to do. So when it comes to losing body fat, like Rodney's saying, you need to figure out how many calories you need to consume. And when your goal is set, around 1 pound, depending on your body fat percentage, is going to be optimal for most people. Now, in the higher levels, you might be able to increase it. In the lower levels, you might have to decrease it. But like we said, the main component, the main group of people can generally afford to lose about 1 pound of fat a week. So I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and it's almost, so my take on like the big deficit is if you're a 300-pound man and you're healthy level, 16% body fat level body weight would be 200 pounds. Well, you may be 1,000 calories in a deficit, but you're probably real close to what your maintenance would be when you got to 200 pounds. And so that's probably how what you said is 100% correct, but that was just the first place my brain went to was, yeah, because when they've got so much more to lose, that is probably their maintenance when they get to that body weight. Just like, yeah, if you're smaller, like I'm probably 18-19% right now. And so for me, maintenance for me to be 170 would be a lot different than if I wanted to set my maintenance if I was 30% and wanted to set it at the same weight level. So yeah, I like the way you put that though. And I'm 100%.
I just want to interject and show that there is no absolutism. Is that a word? I think that's a word.
Yeah.
There is no absolute definition. Now we know some things, and some things are pretty much, but for the most part, science is kind of wacky in that there's no surefire thing. Many roads lead to Rome. I just want to take the most efficient path for me, and I recently came up with a saying that I've been saying a lot. You can wipe your ass with toilet paper or sandpaper. Both work, but one works better, So why do what works when you can do what works best?
Yes.
So Rodney, we have your main 3 points are basically figuring out how many calories you need to do by using a calculator, which I will link below in today's talk. Pretty much going into about 1 pound a week calorie deficit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your third advice for a diabetic looking to lose weight?
Really hammer anaerobic training. I mean, resistance training is proven time and time again to be more effective for fat loss than aerobic training. And the benefit is that you're going to gain probably a little bit of lean body mass in the process, which helps with insulin sensitivity. It helps with raising your base level metabolic rate because your metabolism has to key up to maintain more muscle mass. And so then you can eat more. I mean, that's the real world thing there. We could talk about lots of reasons why lean body mass is great and beneficial, but the real world effect is if I'm 150 pounds of lean body mass, I can eat X amount of calories to maintain that. If I'm 180 pounds of lean body mass, that number grows. And so I like to eat. I'm a big Southerner.
I love to eat. That sounds good to me.
So that's the real world take home to that is lean body mass is always going to benefit you.
Now, I feel another episode coming up where Rodney and I are mostly going to focus on the training aspect with diabetes and its role in weight loss. I see a lot of episodes coming. We can't pack everything in one, guys, but next episode, what Rodney and I are going to be talking about is the training, resistance training, weight training in regards to weight loss for diabetics, some of the issues that occur. And I really do want to include insulin, if not give insulin its own episode, because as I recently wrote in an article, insulin is the Donald Trump of hormones, and it just gets the worst reputation in the world. So we'll touch on that. But Rodney, before we close, is there any other nutritional point in regards to weight loss for diabetics that you really want to touch on?
Man, and we've covered so much. I'm trying to remember if we haven't covered something. You know, the big thing is don't starve yourself. You know, you can eat ample enough calories to not feel like you're restricting your entire life around having to eat a certain way, and that realize that, you know, you're not that different than a non-diabetic when it comes to that goes. And
that is probably the biggest point I want to capitalize on, what he just said. Diabetics we don't have leprosy. We have type 1 diabetes. It's not contagious. It is not restrictive. We're allowed to go outside. We don't burn from the sunlight. We're not vampires. Guys, we are normal human beings with normal metabolic processes, you know? Calories in versus calories out. Do what you want with your carbohydrate to fat intake as long as they're inversely proportional. High protein diet. You do not need to do drastically different things as a diabetic. So I'm so glad you made that point. That is absolutely 100% true.
Yeah.
Do you have any other nutritional things you want to talk? I know we talked about carbs, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback in regards to what we talked about, so we can touch on some of the stuff we talked about in another episode. But I really want to end, guys, with, if you're looking to lose weight as a diabetic management, I shouldn't even have to say manage your diabetes, because that is just a requirement. If you're diabetic, and you're especially a diabetic athlete, manage your diabetes. But you need to figure out how many calories you are consuming, how many calories you need to consume. If your goal doesn't align with your actions, there's no way you're going to get there, you know? So as Rodney has said, use one of the calculators that we're going to include below. Figure out how many calories you should be consuming. Set up a deficit so that you're losing weight on a weekly basis, and train. It's pretty simple, guys. So if you guys have any questions, you can reach Rodney. Do you have any a website or Facebook, social media that they can reach you at?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook page is under Rodney Miller. Instagram is Strong Like Troll. And we'll throw my email address down in the bottom. It's slbperformance@gmail.com. And you know, this is what I do. I'm an admin on the type 1 diabetic athletes forum for this exact reason. Like, I'm here to try to help point people in the right direction.
Awesome. Do you have any more questions for me, Rodney?
No, man, I'm just loving this. This is a great, I'm really excited about where we can go with this.
This will be fun, guys. I really appreciate everyone, watching this. We really appreciate feedback as well. If you have any topics you want us to cover, please shoot us an email, send us a message. We are looking to help as many people as possible. Reach out, because we're doing this for you guys. We want to show that people with diabetes are not limited. You're not limited in your ability to lose weight. You're not limited in your ability to build muscle, Even if you do yoga like me, you can get some muscle, So there's no limitations. And as I always say, limitations are self-imposed. So that was Rodney Miller. I'm Chris Ruden, and that was Diabetes on Blast. Thank you, guys.